Review Book 101 is all about the bookstore right for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is upcoming author and the author of the book Beyond the Diversity Wars, no other than Mr. Thomas Becker. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Thomas, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Sure. Daniel, please feel free to call me Tom. I'm delighted to be here and with you and your audience. So, I'm an organizational psychologist. I've been a researcher and teacher for the past 35 years and a consultant with organizations and government. So, my whole career has been focused on issues of organizational psychology, meaning people at work, um, things like job related attitudes, such as commitment and job satisfaction, job performance, employee well being, and of course, that also includes issues of diversity here in the US with implications internationally.
Mr. Thomas Baker, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And let's talk about your upcoming book, Beyond the Diversity Wars. Can you tell us about this book?
Yeah, you bet. The book is divided into two parts. The first portion, which is the first three chapters, addresses the history of diversity and discrimination in the US. I felt that was an important part to cover because, sometimes when people get focused on where we're at now, they forget where we've been, and therefore it's hard to learn from history. Um, as probably you and many of your listeners know, in the US, we've had historically a lot of issues with so called marginalized groups. This goes all the way back to essentially the genocide of Native Americans in the US, slavery of African Americans up until the end of the Civil War in 1865, and continuing problems in race relations, the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, um, the systematic discrimination against Mexican Americans, immigrants, and well, a lot of other groups, including Jewish individuals. Italians were actually banned from immigrating years ago. Of course, huge issues with women moving into the workplace. So, if you only focus on those events, those laws, those regulations, it's pretty depressing. But I would really hasten to add that there's also been very hopeful progress, um, looking more or less recently. The 1990 Civil Rights Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act were huge accomplishments, making it very expensive to discriminate against people uh, in the workplace. So if you refuse to hire somebody who is African American or a woman or Native American or anybody else really, due to their race, their gender, their ethnicity, their sexual orientation, it can now be very, very expensive for companies that engage in such practices. So there's been really an incredible amount of progress, but we've got a long way to go. We do not yet have a level playing field in the US when it comes to um, those sorts of concerns in human resource management. And so that's what the first part of the book is really all about. It's documenting where we've been, both the progress and the setbacks and the backlash. And the second part of the book is more focused on where we go from here. So there's two ideas. I don't want to just rattle on, Daniel, so feel free to interrupt at any point. But I just wanted to very briefly introduce the two ideas. Uh, because we're living in a very polarized environment with a lot of hostility between people that might traditionally have been called conservatives and liberals. And um, the first idea is having a detente mindset. That is a mindset of instead of I see differences between us and therefore you're my enemy. You don't agree with something that I believe, or I don't agree with something that you believe in, so therefore you're my enemy. The detente mindset really says we're going to find a way to peacefully coexist and hopefully carry on a conversation even though we don't agree. So it doesn't mean you give up your beliefs for me, or I do the same for you, or that I try to force you to believe what I believe. It's more of a um, peaceful sort of way to carry on a conversation. I would say a more mature way. The second thing, besides having a detente mindset, is a notion of whole person appreciation. So, you might look at me, Daniel, or I might look at you and say, okay, in my case, this is perhaps an older white male. I might like look at you just on the screen and say, well, this is a younger male um, individual, I'm guessing of a Asian or Indian background. I really actually, it's very hard to tell oftentimes when you look at people exactly what their heritage might be. That's part of the problem. We make assumptions in that regard. But we've got these categories or these labels. And in some cases, that's perfectly reasonable. People have social identities that they use to describe who they are. The problem is when we reduce somebody to those social categories, we miss a lot of who they are as individuals. And if we don't have an appreciation for the person as a whole, then it makes conversation and forming bridges of discussion amid differences very difficult. So that's an overview of what the book is about, and we can talk about any related or unrelated topics that you think might interest you and your listeners.
Mr. Thomas, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. I'm looking forward for the book. So, can you share a concrete example of how writing it changed how you approach a specific relationship or conversation?
Yeah, you bet. I think the research on the book really opened my eyes to both the good and the bad that my country has engaged in when it comes to human relations and the progress and the backlash. It's easy to just look at, say, the last 10 years and see so much animosity and heat rather than light when it comes to discussions about extremely important social and cultural issues. It's really kind of boiled down to good guys and bad guys. And, if you didn't know the history, you'd be very, I think, cynical about things. But that history of back and forth, progress, backlash, really provides a context to what it's meant in the US to slowly, take two steps forward and one step back, two steps forward, one step back, with the goal being to eventually have something that resembles a truly um, fair and equitable society where equal rights are applied to all individuals. And if not harmony, that might be a little too ambitious of a goal given human experience, but at least peaceful coexistence. and a way to live together without animosity and, where possible, to cooperate. So that's really what the research on the book has taught me. It sometimes depressed me to read more about what the U.S. has done at certain points in its history. For example, I didn't know much about the treatment of disabled individuals back in the 1940s and 50s. We actually sterilized over 60,000 people, um, on the basis of, at the time, the belief that they were not cognitively advanced enough, that the US wanted them to, you know, have kids and propagate what they thought might be, um, you know, substandard individuals, whatever that might mean. So we had a period where there was actually eugenics being practiced in the US, and I had very little knowledge about that. There's a Supreme Court case, a very famous one, involving the sterilization of a woman called Carrie Buck. The Supreme Court, which had both progressive and conservative justices, voted that she could be sterilized so that she would not be able to have children. Yeah, so this is the learning that I've gone through and researching the book and coming out the other end and thinking about, okay, well, we can complain and feel bad about that, or we can try to find a way forward, where we continue on a path that I think is consistent with our founders' vision of a society where equal rights were granted to all.
Beautifully articulated, Mr. Thomas. Very well said. If you had to pick one book of the three the most fundamentally shifted your self perception, which would it be and why?
Regarding my self perception, so yeah, you know what? I would go outside of the scope of our current conversation about my book and go back to a book that I actually read for the first time when I was like 18 years old. You know, I came from a difficult childhood and struggled with a lot of the things that I guess many young people go through about, who am I? What do I want to do with my life? What's my purpose and everything? And it might sound sort of superficial or naive now, but the book that really got me out of a pretty dark period was called Erroneous Zones by essentially a pop psychologist named Wayne Dyer. He was credentialed, he actually had a PhD in psychology. But the great value of the book was he brought basically scholarly notions of self perception and identity and independent thinking and self esteem, and overcoming things in your life that might be holding you back. So, I look at that book now or reread passages from it and I think, well, this is kind of basic or it's not real sophisticated, but it really came to me at an ideal time. And I'd have to say, in many ways, it saved my life or at least allowed me to have a form of personal development that I would have never had. So it's a great book, Erroneous Zones by Wayne Dyer.
Indeed, highly recommended, people. Please read it. Beyond the diversity wars suggests moving beyond conflict. What a specific war mentality or productive pattern do you argue we most need to move past based on your research or writing?
Yeah, that's a great question, Daniel. Um, I would say that the greatest thing we've got to move past, our biggest challenge right now, is to not just limit our view of other human beings to certain social categories. The related danger is to pretend like those categories don't matter. They do matter. They matter to people in terms of how they define themselves. They matter in terms of overcoming past injustices and identifying where those injustices occur. But if all you do is use those social identities or social categories, rather than peeling back the onion of who an individual is, you miss a great deal. Just as an example, let's say in the workplace you had two people who were fundamentally very different when it came to their politics. Maybe one, to use US examples, maybe one person is a staunch Democrat, very progressive. Perhaps that person believes that a woman should have the right to choose when it comes to having an abortion. Maybe the other person is a staunch Republican, very conservative, believes that abortion in most cases is murder. So those two people, if they start talking about abortion and immediately define each other as, oh, you're a raging liberal and you're a crazy conservative, they're never going to find a bridge for any meaningful discussion. But let's say they know each other more than just these labels. Maybe through, previous discussion, they know that each of them enjoys a certain kind of music. Let's say, I'm just using that as an example. Maybe they know that they both enjoy jazz. Well, the fact that they happen to know this sort of idiosyncratic information about each other gives them a possible bridge. So rather than focusing only on their political differences, they've got a way to talk about things that they both are interested in. So they might actually bond over something like, you know, what do you think about Miles Davis or John Coltrane or some other great jazz individual or group, and they've got a bond because of that. And since they have a bond, they're more willing to listen to each other without trying to pretend like these differences don't exist politically, but also without hating each other or becoming enemies over this one slice of their identity, one part of who they are. So that's what I think is our biggest challenge, is to really have a goal and a methodology of understanding each other beyond social categories.
Mr. Thomas, you see a common theme of role and importance of science in solving today's most pressing problems. How does your book uniquely contribute to understanding the role of everything on this world?
Yeah, I think there's a number of ways you can approach a given problem. In the book, I'm focusing on the problem of human relationships and the polarization that I've been discussing. But a bigger, question is how do you approach that problem? And I think the essence of science is that you try to build knowledge based on observation, based on research, and based on logic. So rather than us hurling stones at each other saying, oh, this is what we should do, or this is what we should do, in many cases, including conflict and conflict resolution, a meaningful step forward can be based on evidence gathered from scientific studies. And there is an incredible wealth of research on things like conflict and conflict management. There's a whole field of organizational psychology and social psychology that shows tendencies that people have, for example, when they're in groups, to engage in group think where they stop critically thinking about possibilities for resolving problems and just fall into a us versus them mentality. But fortunately, through research, we know that there's ways out of that. So one thing I try to do in the book is bring relevant research from social psychology, organizational psychology, but also from public policy research, from research on leadership and ethics in society. So I'm really trying to draw from a broad scientific base to bring some light to a problem that's really kind of produced darkness over many years. So that's the role of science, I believe, is to give us a more objective way to address these issues rather than just this is my opinion, this is your opinion.
Very well said, Mr. Thomas. And again, we are looking forward for that book. So, as a psychologist and upcoming author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Yeah, my short-term goal is just to finish the book. It's 95% done. I'm submitting a prospectus and two complete chapters to Oxford University Press next week. I've had some promising conversations with them. My hope is that that'll be published later this year or the first of next year. So the book will be out and available. That's my short-term goal. The longer-term goal is, I'm a little older than you are, Daniel. I'm 66 years old, so I retired from the University of South Florida a couple of years ago. And one thing that I found is, in retirement, you still need a purpose. You don't just sit around
Yes.
wondering, what the next television show is going to be or something. You still need a purpose, or at least I still need a purpose. And work and family, of course, are for many of us, myself included, kind of the core of what we want to continue enjoying and discovering as we move forward. So, long term goal is to continue being productive, to enjoy my family. My youngest son, Charlie, is getting married in October.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah,
Congratulations.
that feels great. He lives in Portugal, Lisbon, Portugal, now, and he and his fiancee will be married over there. So we're going to be traveling in October to attend that joyous ceremony. So, yeah, just still trying to stay engaged in life, and podcasts like this are part of it too. Just trying to have conversations with people and bounce ideas off each other. So, yeah, much appreciated.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Thomas. And what is your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be a psychologist or to be an author?
Yeah, I guess my friendly piece of advice would be, um, first of all, study what you love. When you sit down to write a book, you're in it for a while, so you should be writing about something that you have some knowledge of rather, and that you want to acquire a great more deal of information about. You're going to be living with this book for a while. So, as an author, pick something you love. The other piece of advice, I know you just asked for one, but I would give one more piece of advice is, everybody's aware of AI and artificial intelligence these days. I would say put that to good use. It's not going to write a book for you. It's not going to do your work for you, but it can be an extraordinarily helpful tool, almost a collaborator in a way, in helping you accomplish what you want to accomplish in a scholarly way, or in writing whatever kind of book you want. So that's my friendly advice to uh, prospective authors. Write about what you love, what you want to learn about, and put all the tools at your disposal to good use.
Well, thank you for your advice, Mr. Thomas. And before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101, Love Letters in third season, and Movie 101 review and Music 101 in fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in each first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. Mr. Thomas, if you could distill one core principle derived from your upcoming book into every organization or team, what would be and why?
Yeah, it's going to be no surprise given our discussion. It's try to really master whole person appreciation. And in everyday language, what that means is when you meet somebody, you're going to have some impression about who they are from the moment you meet them. That's fine. You're going to see certain social categories. That's a man, that's a woman, that's perhaps somebody that here in the US we would call an Asian or Hispanic, or that's a woman, or whatever it might be. But that is like just first impressions. If you really want to contribute to the world around you, including your organization, get past, go beyond those social categories and try to get to know them truly as an individual. You'll be glad you did, and so will your organization.
Mr. Thomas Becker, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world through your upcoming book. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your book itself?
Yeah, I would just say the best way to do that, I'm on LinkedIn primarily. You can easily go on LinkedIn and just search for Thomas E. Becker. That'll pull up my site. That's the easiest way to find me. You can do it in a minute. And obviously, you can message me there. You can learn more about my work. And you can contact me. Be happy to discuss further any of these issues or others that your listeners would be interested in. So I would say LinkedIn is probably the best. You can also reach me at beckert1000 at gmail.com. That's Becker, T, Beckert, 1000 at gmail.com.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Thomas Adrian Baker, because if you support him for sure, more and more and more empowering books to come, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Mr. Thomas, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dan. It was a real pleasure to be here.
More to come, people. See you soon.